Blackmere was the kind of town where nothing ever seemed to change. Quiet streets, old wooden houses, and a lake that stayed covered in mist most mornings. Most people kept to themselves and ignored the strange stories that had been whispered about the town for years. When a local antiques dealer named Harold Finch passed away, his small shop was opened for auction. Inside the dusty building were shelves filled with forgotten objects from different eras. But one item stood apart from everything else. Locked inside a cracked glass case sat a porcelain doll with pale painted skin and bright blue glass eyes. Clara Whitmore, an investigative journalist who specialized in unusual stories, noticed it immediately. Something about the doll felt different from the other antiques surrounding it. The auctioneer briefly mentioned that Finch had always refused to sell the doll while he was alive and had kept it locked away for years. That single detail caught Clara's attention. While most people at the auction avoided even looking at the doll, Clara decided to buy it. The price was surprisingly low, as if nobody else wanted to take it home. When Clara lifted the glass case and wrapped the doll in old newspaper, a strange chill passed through the room. She ignored the uneasy feeling and drove back to her apartment with the doll resting in the back seat. Later that night, while examining it under a bright lamp, Clara noticed a small carving on the back of its neck. The porcelain had been scratched carefully with a single name, Eliza. Clara knew that if the doll was connected to something unusual, she would need help investigating it. The first person she contacted was Marcus Hale, a local historian who knew almost everything about Blackmere's past. Marcus had spent years researching forgotten stories hidden inside the town's archives. When Clara told him about the doll and the name carved into it, he immediately agreed to help. The following day he arrived at her apartment carrying a satchel filled with old newspaper clippings and town records. Later that evening, Clara's friend Lena Torres joined them. Lena was skilled with electronics and often helped Clara document strange occurrences using cameras and recording equipment. She set up small devices around the apartment while Marcus carefully examined the doll. As they searched through the old records, Marcus eventually found a faded newspaper clipping from the early 20th century. It described the disappearance of a young girl named Eliza Hawthorne who had vanished without explanation nearly 100 years earlier. The discovery created an uncomfortable silence in the room. The doll sitting on Clara's table now seemed far more important than any of them had expected. At first, the strange events were easy to dismiss. Late one night Lena reviewed the recordings from the audio devices she had placed around the room. One file contained a faint tapping sound repeating slowly in a pattern. None of them remembered hearing anything like that while they were in the apartment. Lena adjusted the sound levels and confirmed the recording was real. Marcus suggested it could be the building's pipes or old wiring, but even he sounded uncertain. Over the next few days Clara noticed small changes whenever she walked into the room where the doll sat. Its head sometimes appeared tilted slightly differently than before. One evening Lena checked the camera footage and discovered a brief moment where the video flickered. When the image returned, the doll's head seemed to be facing a different direction. The room had been empty the entire time. No one spoke for several seconds after watching the clip. For Clara, the investigation was starting to feel less like a simple story and more like something deeply unsettling. Marcus spent several days researching the name Eliza Hawthorne. Eventually he uncovered a collection of records about the Hawthorne family, who had once lived in a large estate outside Blackmere. Their daughter Eliza had disappeared one winter evening while playing in the garden. The search for her had lasted weeks but ended without answers. Over time the case faded from public memory, leaving behind only scattered reports and rumors. One particular document mentioned that Eliza owned a porcelain doll she carried almost everywhere. The description matched the doll Clara had purchased almost perfectly. Marcus realized that the object sitting on Clara's desk might actually be the same doll from the old reports. If that was true, the doll had somehow survived nearly a century before ending up in their antique shop. Clara looked at the doll again, noticing the delicate lace clothing and carefully painted features. It no longer seemed like a random antique. It looked like a piece of someone's forgotten story. The activity in the apartment slowly became more noticeable. Lena's equipment began detecting sudden bursts of electromagnetic interference near the table where the doll sat. Some nights the room felt colder than the rest of the apartment even though the heating was working normally. Clara started writing down every strange event, trying to find patterns or explanations. One night Clara woke after hearing a soft humming sound from the living room. When she walked toward the table, the humming stopped immediately. The doll sat exactly where she had left it, but something else had appeared beside it. A small dried flower rested on the table. Clara was certain it had not been there earlier. The next day Marcus identified the flower as a plant that once grew in the gardens of the Hawthorne estate. The discovery left them with a chilling possibility. Somehow the doll might be connected to the place where Eliza Hawthorne disappeared. Marcus eventually found a hidden set of personal letters written by members of the Hawthorne family. One letter from Eliza's older brother described something the family had never revealed publicly. According to the letter, Eliza had often spoken about hearing strange voices near an old well in the garden behind their house. One evening she wandered out toward the well and never came back. The family searched the area but never found her. The three investigators decided to visit the abandoned Hawthorne estate. The property had been empty for decades, with vines and wild plants covering most of the grounds. In the center of the overgrown garden stood the old stone well mentioned in the letter. As Lena approached it, her equipment began detecting the same unusual readings they had seen around the doll. When Marcus shined a flashlight down into the well, something could be seen far below beneath layers of debris. In that moment, they realized the truth about what had happened might have been hidden there all along. After informing local authorities, a careful investigation of the well was organized. The search revealed remains that strongly suggested the lost girl had been at the bottom of the well for decades. For the first time since the disappearance, the truth about Eliza Hawthorne was finally uncovered. The discovery allowed the town to close a mystery that had remained unsolved for nearly a century. Not long after the well was examined, the strange activity around the doll stopped completely. The recordings showed no unusual sounds, and Lena's equipment returned to normal readings. Clara eventually donated the doll to a small historical museum so it could be preserved safely. As she watched the display case being closed, the doll's expression seemed calm rather than unsettling. Clara couldn't prove exactly what had caused the strange events, but one thing felt certain. Eliza Hawthorne's story had finally been heard, and after all those years, the mystery had finally come to an end.